right. How's everybody doing tonight? I should get myself a flashy intro like John's Longbox has for his live streams, but I don't have one as of yet. So I'll just introduce everyone. Of course, everyone knows John from Comic Book Team Up, and tonight we have Josh Howard here with us. He is in his last 3 days of Dead at 17 Kill Day, which is on Kickstarter right now. Link for it is in the description. How you doing, guys?
I'm great.
I'm doing good. How you doing, Josh?
Couldn't be better.
Yeah, you're doing good. You're doing good. I'm rooting for you, man. I'm excited for you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been exciting. I still can't believe how well it's done. So I'm over the moon every day. I keep having dreams that like everyone backs out and it's down to 0 because it's like, wow, is this really happening? So
the last day of the Kickstarter campaign, everybody goes psych.
yeah. So fingers crossed that doesn't happen, but yeah.
No, that won't happen. You know, for those of you who don't know, Josh, you've been making comics for a while now. Dead at 17. What year did that come out?
2003.
Oh, I was gonna say 2012. So I was even off. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is part of the reason that I'm doing this is sort of a 20th anniversary, celebration of the book and my career. So it was my first book. It's it's where I got started. So
that was your first book?
Yeah.
Because that was a big deal. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, is the Mandela effect fixing my brain? But I remember like commercials on like MTV for Dead at 17.
No, you're mixing it up with a show they had. I was completely unaware of called Dead at 21.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Forget that stupid show.
But I've been mentioned on MTV.
Oh, I can't hear you. You cutting out.
I have been mentioned on MTV though.
Okay.
So
yeah. And at one point, you almost had a movie made.
At many points, I've almost had a movie made. Yeah, I've been through the Hollywood ringer a few times. So,
believe it or not, Comic Book Team Up has been optioned for a movie with RJ and we're gonna be like Abby Costello. I'm gonna come out and hit him on the head. Why are you on it? We're gonna be plumbers who just don't know how to plumb, and there's gonna be water shooting all over the place. There you go, guys. There's a free comic book idea. Art. The fourth age of John's Longbox, bad plumbers.
I think we'd be electricians, John, if you ask me. Bad electricians, that'd be much funnier.
Oh,
but hey.
that would be horrible because bad plumbing, everybody just gets wet and their ice cream sags. But bad electricity, everybody's burnt to death. That's not... I'm just thinking about that. That would be funny. So Josh, I've been saying for years that you draw the cutest girls.
Well,
do you think that has anything to do with your success at all?
I think it's most of my success.
Look at that. Except all, RJ. There you go. Yeah, I always knew Dead at 17, and I bought Dead at 17, and I bought why can't I think of the other one? The Black
Harvest.
Yeah, Black Harvest, and I loved them, but I didn't make the connection. And then I picked up T-Bird and Throttle from Alterna, and that I got cold because I'm an Alterna fanboy. I got everything, and I remember I got Wolf and Batsy, I got T-Bird and Throttle in the same package. And I think Horse H. Hoover was in that also, and I was like, oh my God, Alterna's got to be the best comic book company in the world because I never bought original art before, and I had to commission Brian Bow to do a piece, and I had to get a piece from you. I have them hanging up in my comic book room. That's how much I love these comics. And you did a commission of Throttle on a one of those little things,
yeah. Right.
And that has given me, you know how many times I lost that? Throttle really is trouble in real life. She's not just a troublemaker in the comic books. She's a troublemaker. I've lost that like 6 times. Now I got to find it again. I'm looking over here. But I'm talking too much because I'm just an excited fanboy. When everything else, chip away everything else, I'm just an excited comic book fanboy.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you've always been since I've known you, you've been a big cheerleader. So I really appreciate that. And yeah, but there's I think 3 days left in the campaign. It ends Sunday. So So I got lots of stretch goals unlocked. I think about 8 right now, if I'm not mistaken.
So what is this? Is this new material? Is this just a comic? Is this a series?
Yeah. So what this is, it's called Dead at 17 Kill Day, and what it is, it's a single comic. It's 36 pages, but the concept is it's a sort of a retelling of the original issue 1, but from a different perspective. The original issue was told from the perspective of Nara's best friend. Nara's the lead character of the series. It's mostly told from her friend's perspective. This is told from Nara's perspective, and she's the girl who gets killed in the first issue. So you're going to follow her on her journey to like sort of the afterlife and her resurrection and sort of what happens afterwards. But it's more than that. What it does is going to introduce some new story elements that sort of are going to set up a brand new series coming next year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this is sort of going back to the beginning, giving it a fresh start, and then going forward.
Oh, wow. That is it. A new series. I'm excited. I'm
Yeah.
excited. Are all your comics set in the same continuity? Like, could they potentially bump into T-Bird and Throttle?
No. I did 3 different comics back in the day that sort of were in the same world as Dead at 17, but T-Bird is its own universe.
Okay.
Yeah, it's separate.
Yeah, you did the Eve comic that I absolutely loved. I'm a fan. I'm a Josh Howard fanboy. Anything you did that Sasquatch book that I had to track down and get. I love that. And Dead at 17. I remember getting them all, and I bought them from different places. So I actually messaged you. What order do I read these?
Oh, right.
You know?
Yeah. So
RJ, are you familiar with Dead at 17?
I am not. This is my first. Well, I know of it through you because you've praised the book before, and I've seen art from you have shown it before, but I have never read it, and I did not know the story until just a moment ago when Josh explained it to us.
Yeah, it's right up your alley because a lot of theological themes.
Yes, that is definitely the sort of the centerpiece. Also, with this book too, I wanted to point out.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I just remembered. You don't have to have read the series beforehand to read this. This is sort of designed for new people and longtime readers, so don't be intimidated by that. However, if you do want to catch up, I'm also offering the original issue 1 with this campaign, as well as you can get a PDF copy of the entire original series.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. That is cool. Yeah, because your original story went from couple of different companies.
Yeah, I began at an indie publisher called Viper Comics. That's where I got my start, and then so about midway through, Image came calling, and I went over to Image to finish out the series. So
yeah.
So
there was a lot of new number 1s. That's why I was like, what order do you?
Yeah,
have
it
a
was
collection though, right?
There is a complete collection trade paperback omnibus thing you can get on Amazon. I would love to reprint it myself and offer it, but it's so big I could not. It's not financially feasible for me to do it on my own.
Yeah.
At least anytime soon. So, but you can still get it on Amazon if you want it. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah, RJ, this is like horror theology. The big question. I think this would be right up your alley. And there's a cute girl in it in a couple of pages, right?
Vaz asked if well, I want to go off of Vaz's question here. What was the option for the movie for Dead for 17 or for something else?
Yes, it's been optioned many times. It's come close many times. In fact, back in 2016, I had an official short film made. You can watch on YouTube right now. It's like a 10-minute long. It was kind of like a proof of concept, and that almost became a series. And so it's been optioned with many places, but it just never quite happened.
What would you prefer? Like a true to the comic series, like a Netflix series or a movie? What do you think would be best?
That's a good question, and I've gone back and forth with that. I don't know. I think a series gives it time to breathe and get noticed by people. A movie could come and go and be forgotten pretty quick, especially these days.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
Kevin
either way,
Costner's big movie that it's bombing, and it looks like a really good movie. This,
yeah.
It's not a good time for movies. Yeah, I was hoping you'd say Netflix, because everybody's putting their butts in a chair and watching TV shows these days.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. I don't. Who knows if anything will ever happen? But I'm just trying to focus on the comic and not worry about all that.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, I have to ask the elephant in the room question about what is your inspiration for your art style? Because to me, it looks like, well, it has changed significantly from the first issue that we were showing earlier from 2003, but it kind of looks like Archie style meets Jack Kirby, if you ask me.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I love Jack Kirby. I love Bruce Timm. I love Art Adams. Um, Even Frank Miller seeps in there a little bit. I grew up following all the greats, so I learned from all of them. So I'm sure there's bits of all of them and all that, but also just animation itself. I grew up on '80s cartoons, so that's sort of why I just my style looks very animated. Yeah. So
And you do everything. You're the colorist. You're the artist. You're the writer.
right.
I think a one-man show is the purest form of comics. Unfortunately, I can't even draw stick figures. I'm so bad. So
Now that you mentioned he's the colorist, I'm going through all the black and white. I want to see a colored page. What's your basic color palette? Are you going with older? Obviously, it seems to be a modified older color palette.
What do you mean by that?
Just the basic color palette, say Marvel, DC, say 90-ish, but you have a lot more shading in there as well.
Yeah, like I said, I try to follow sort of as far as like figure shading and stuff. Like I try to keep it an animation style look, very simple. So yeah, I mean, I don't. It's funny. Like when I started coloring I started coloring my stuff because I had to. I didn't have a choice. And I never really thought about it, and I just did it, and so it is what it is. So.
just so you know, I just updated my pledge to include the Archie homage cover. I love that. As a good RJ's talking, I'm gonna go update my pledge. I back this. I'm an unabashed Josh Howard fanboy. Anything you make, I'm getting. That's how much I loved. Like I got your comics before I knew they were you, and then T-Bird and Throttle was just you doing superheroes. That's right up my alley. Oh man, and I just love that. So now anything you do, I'm backing without any questions ado or anything. So I'm fanboying out and making a fool out of myself. I do that a lot.
No, it's all good, John. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
That cover is just fun.
Yeah, it was a blast. Yeah, I got the idea for Archie homage, and I had to do it.
So what comics did you grow up reading? I know you're a horror fan. What did you grow up reading?
The first comics I ever read were G.I. Joe and Transformers from Marvel. I mean, that was sort of my introduction to comics.
Whenever people say that, I feel so old.
Well, I know. I feel like I got into comics kind of late as far as comics proper, because it wasn't until Batman came out in '89 that I was like, I went all, because I didn't. Here's the weird thing, I didn't know comics were that dark, could be that dark and serious. I thought they were all kind of silly. That was just my impression as a kid, that they were all kind of super friends.
Yeah, that's DC.
Well, yeah. So, but when I saw Batman '89, I saw these other, like, because that's when you could go into a store and see like Frank Miller stuff on the wall, all this, I was like, wow, comics can be cool and dark and gritty, and I was like, that appealed to me even as a kid. Like that's what I wanted. So that sort of opened the doors for me to, jump into comics.
Yeah. Were you the kind of kid that was always drawing and doodling, like?
Oh yeah, all the time. Like, it just never stopped. My parents encouraged me because they said they obviously could tell that, that it was more than just a passing thing. So yeah,
Yeah. I remember just as a kid, like my friends were like, "Yeah, comic books are silly," and I'm like, "No, no, no, comics are good, you know, comics." And that Batman '89 movie, like you said, I remember getting excited about it. I was out of high school. I was working at the telephone company right out of high school, and I was talking about this movie, and they're like, "Michael Keaton's playing Batman in a Batman movie. Oh, it's gonna be so funny! I can't wait. This is gonna be the funniest movie." And I'm like, "No, it's gonna be dark." They're like, Batman's not dark. It's silly. You know, they're still thinking Adam West. And then that movie came out, and I think that I people get mad when I say this, but I didn't particularly like the movie. Even at the time, I didn't like the movie. But I got to admit, it was a phenomenon, and it was probably the best thing for comic books because, like you said, it showed people that comic books are more than just Boff Blemo, you know, or like somebody stole my costume. Let's fly to Jupiter and recover my stolen costume. You know.
Well, the irony is, I love that stuff now. Like, I love the the silly comics now. So
I do too now. That's funny. I've come full circle.
Yeah.
You know what I'm collecting right now? I'm collecting the Adventures of Bob Hope. Those old DC comics drawn by Bob. Oh man, it's like I hate him and I love him at the same time because that wise ass Bob Hope character. I just want to strangle him. Like you are such a detestable, but they're great comics. They're just silly and goofy, and I don't know. 52 issues every month. This guy Bob Ostler is like an unsung genius. I mean, 52 pages a month, not 52 issues a month. What am I talking about? So, I love that symbol that you have of like that. I call it the Texas Star with the lightning bolt. It's such a great symbol.
Oh, the broken pentagram. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a thing about, I use it for superheroes, but there has to be a good symbol. You know, that is just a perfect superhero symbol. You know, you could put that on a bad guy's chest. That would be awesome. Fiasco, is this your original?
Yeah, this is the original version I made in the 90s. Before I was published, I just, made it at the local Kinko's, and I'm actually reprinting that for this campaign. It's an add-on, so you can see my ugly.
I gotta go back and update my pledge again.
Yeah, this thing is very crude, but I figure some people might enjoy seeing it. So
yeah, I know Brian has a Tales of Blue Shoggoth, an old comic that he won't read. I'm like, Brian, I want this. I gotta get it.
Yeah, sure.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm getting lost in the campaign. Just going down and down.
So, RJ, you keep talking about making comic book women beautiful again. What do you think? RJ, he makes like look at that. That is just a beautiful woman. You know, it's cartoony, but at the same time, it's sexy. You know, you walk in both worlds here. I think. Does anybody ever give you any pushback? Like, you know, these women are too sexy.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, I get some of that. You know how it is. But like I'm never going to stop drawing, pretty girls. I don't care what anyone says, especially now when it seems like that's sort of gone away in comics.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like now it's important that I do it.
Well, like, comic books are a visual medium, and and there's a reason why there's 12 billion people on the planet. I was just talking with Peter Gilmore, who says he loves drawing women more than anything else. It's like, you go back to some of the earliest art in caves. It's boobs. It's, you know what I mean? There's a reason. Yeah. There's a reason why it's like, it's what keeps the species going. It's so I don't understand. There's nothing wrong with a sexy woman. There's nothing wrong with a muscular man. I think if somebody is like outraged by this, to me, it shows that there's some sort of internal trauma or something. I almost feel bad for them. Like, it's just a drawing. Like, the first thing I drew when I was a little kid was like a Wonder Woman and a Superman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find it funny too, because the fact that you're taking your inspiration from animation, because both John and I are working with Nick X, who originally had an animation company. So we got a lot of people that are moving from animation back into comics, and I asked him, he wants to do his own book, but he said, if you want to do another book together, because we're doing Crom the Destroyer from right now, but that's a barbarian book. He said, let's do something with beautiful women. He said, I know what I like to draw and I know what I'm good at. Give me beautiful women.
And Nick does draw beautiful women, guys. I've seen some of the art. He shows me. Oh man, he could draw a beautiful woman. Yeah. And you know what's funny? Josh, I'm sure you could back me up. Women like to see beautiful women in comics.
Yes, most of my like I wouldn't say most, but a large chunk of my fans, especially even starting back in 2003, were girls and women. Yeah, because they yeah, it's totally. And Brian will say the same. Brian will say.
Brian says the same thing. He says he's always astounded by the women tell him, oh, they love Batsy. They love how you draw Batsy. Batsy. So for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, we're talking about Brian Bowles' Wolf and Batsy, a werewolf and a vampire. He draws a sexy vampire chick. Everybody loves, ask any girl who's a fan of Wolf and Batsy. They love Batsy. Yeah. Look at that. You also draw on the covers to Candy Vigilante for a while. Are you still doing that?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
That.
Yeah, I normally don't get the variant covers, but I had to get the Josh Coward covers for that comic. No offense to the other guys. No offense.
Yeah, if you want to scroll back up, that there's the cover right before this. Yeah, so this is a real actress who played Nara in the short film.
Oh,
yeah. So this is sort of a tribute to that. Thought it'd be cool to do a photo cover. So.
Oh, I thought that was a painting. That's a photograph. Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Ah, wow. That must be so frustrating. I'm sorry to keep bringing that up, but so many comic book people just like almost happened.
Yep.
Would you have had creative control?
With this last version, yes, I would have had some degree of control.
That's good.
Yeah, but before that, no.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
So RJ, when is the Valiant Heroes movie coming out, and who can I play?
I don't know. We'll make you ostrich. I think John has that.
There you go. Yeah. Oh, cool. I get killed in the first 10 minutes. Thank you. All right. That's good. That's good. I want to be why can't I think of his name?
Who, Pulse?
Yeah, Pulse. I like Pulse.
Oh yeah, you get to put the bandana on your head the whole time, so hide your hair.
Yeah, give him a beard. That's fine. The old cranky.
He does have a beard.
Yeah.
He's got a beard.
Cranky, gruff. I like that.
He's my full Wolverine character. Basically, he's like a very tall Wolverine.
So you said you're closing out on Sunday.
Yeah, it's Sunday. Yeah.
Now, how many campaigns have you run before?
Let me think. 5 or 6, I think.
Have you used different formats, or are you a Kickstarter guy?
No. My very first one I did Kickstarter for T-Bird #1, and it did okay. And then I saw a lot of people going to Indiegogo. It seemed like it was really building up to be a cool comic community there, and so I went to Indiegogo. And I did the rest of T-Bird there, or at least the rest so far, and they did pretty good. Dead at 17 didn't do as well, and the reason for that I think is because Dead at 17 sort of has a history that goes back, and I think a lot of older comic fans, and I think most of them are on Kickstarter. Indiegogo seems to be a lot of it's a certain crowd. A lot of younger fans, I think, too, on Indiegogo, who don't necessarily remember Dead at 17. So, so my hunch was right. I obviously went over there and it blew up at Kickstarter. So,
yeah, the reason why I ask is, I'm on Fund My Comic right now, and I'm happy with what I'm doing, but I'm going to start Kickstarter on Friday with my comics. So I just want to know what I'm in for. Some people tell me, "Oh, you're going to get nothing." Other people are like, "Oh, you're going to do so good." I don't know what to expect. This is my first time, so I'm always asking the veterans how they did.
Well, I mean, I feel like it was my first time because when I first did it, it was like back in 2017. So it's been a while since I've been on Kickstarter. But I will say, I think people there, the fans on Kickstarter, are definitely more active and engaged, and they have, I think it comes with Kickstarter comes with a lot of expectations. Like they seem to want more stretch goals, more goodies, that type of thing. But it's cool because they express their wants to you. I mean, they're not shy to say you should do this, you should do that. So you kind of have to be open and on your toes to kind of adjust to what the fans are saying to you.
You have a lot of updates,
Yeah, to do a lot of updates. So,
well, I'm going to pause for just 1 second here. Can we play the trailer? Is there any no copyright music or anything, is there?
no, it's licensed. Everything's licensed, so it's good.
Okay, I'm going to just give everybody a little taste of what your book is about, and for myself as well. Just 1 second here. All right. The one question I'm going to ask, because I'm looking at T-Bird and Throttle, and I've seen T-Bird and Throttle a lot, and especially, on Twitter and things like that, people are promoting it. But would you rather do a horror book or a superhero book?
Horror is more my lane. It was like one of those things where it's like I just happen to have this idea that can only be told through a superhero medium, and I will never do probably. I don't say never, but I don't think I'll ever do another superhero book. T-Bird is it, but I will probably do other. I can imagine doing other horror ideas, or at least supernatural theme type things. So,
well, T-Bird and Throttle, like you said, you'll never do another, but it's a pretty expensive world. You have a lot of other heroes in the,
yes, yeah, it's definitely gonna keep me busy for a while. That's one reason, because like it's still got a few issues or chapters left to tell, and I actually have this dream of doing, once the series is over, going back and doing a T-Bird like adventure style book, where it'd be very much like Silver Age inspired, like a fun, lighthearted, kind of retro throwback type series. So one day I'd like to do something like that. Once the series proper is done.
Set it up for a Total Eclipse like issue somewhere in the next 10 years. If you remember Total Eclipse, they took all those, I think it was Chuck Dixon, took all the public domain characters and then put them in this horror world, which basically was the end of times.
Yeah, who was that for? I don't remember that.
That was Eclipse. That was
that was the name of
that was Marv Wolfman wrote it.
Was it?
Yeah,
I thought it was Chuck. Chuck did the Airboy before that that they used. That's what it was.
Yeah, Chuck Airboy was his first comic, I think. You said you like horror, but when T-Bird and Throttle has horror elements in it,
it does,
and sci-fi. It's like it's a real hybrid of superheroes and I think horror and sci-fi. Like if the first issue is almost like a zombie guy, and the second issue, the second story rather, is moon beings, and now you have like lizard people coming up. It's like sci-fi 50s.
Yeah, it truly is like just everything that I love in one book. It's just it's probably the most me in that sense, where it's just like I like this, I like this, I like this, and just threw it all in.
Yeah,
so.
It's fun. Superheroes are my thing, so I can talk about T-Bird and Throttle. It really was. It came at a right time where my interest in comics was not waning, but I'll say my interest in new comics was waning because the Marvel and DC situations was really really wearing on me. I'm like, when characters that you love for your whole life, and I know that sounds weird to say, but like some of these characters were like as dear to me as friends. You know what I mean? Like Ben Grimm. You know what I mean? And Superman. I'm like, oh man, like I spent more time with them than some of my real life friends, as nerdy as that sound. And then to see them being so mistreated and whatever, it was depressing. And then along comes T-Bird Throttle, and oh wow, this is a guy that gets it. This is a guy that loves superheroes, and it was fun.
Yeah, because like I felt sort of the same way, that I was not seeing the kind of book that I wanted to read as far as superheroes go, So yeah, like but these characters that we all love, they haven't lasted for decades and decades because they're always changed, just because there's a consistency to them. Yeah, there's always tweaks here and there, and they'll change, they'll go back, but for the most part, the core of these characters have remained steady for all this time. And that's why they've had this longevity, So the idea that you could come in and today and just completely rewrite them, change who they are, and they're going to remain successful is absurd,
Right? You're coming on and you're standing on the shoulders of giants, and then you're dismissing the giants that you're standing on. That, to me, that was the biggest disrespect. Like I got out of mainstream comics before this whole political race swapping and whatever. For a modern, I left when they were getting, I call them the tourist writers that were just coming through, and all they wanted to do was leave their mark and move, leave them. And I found that to just be so disrespectful. Like, can you imagine? I'm going to write T-Bird and Throttle, and I just turned them into whatever, just change their race, change the dynamic, There you go, Josh. Thanks for letting me write your comic.
Well, do you think a lot of this is because Marvel made superheroes and all that mainstream, that it brought more attention to comics that didn't used to be there, so it brought in these new people who.
Oh, absolutely, and I'm sure RJ can back me up. Like,
yep,
comic books were better when they were fringe. I mean, they sold better,
right?
Because it's a big country. 500 million people or 250 million people, or you know what I mean. Like a fraction of that is still a huge market, and the people that were into it were into it. The Denny O'Neills, the Roy Thomases, the Stan Lees, the John B.C. These guys loved the medium, and it paid their bills, and they respected the characters. And like Denny O'Neil said, when I'm done, I'm going to put Batman back on the shelf, and then somebody else is going to take Batman off the shelf, and Batman's going to pay their bills. He's going to pay their mortgage. He's going to put their kids through college, and then when they're done, they're going to put them back on the shelf, dust them off, and somebody else, like he said, he was the custodian of this character. And then comics got big, and people were like, oh, wow, I could do that. I could do that. That's cool. This is a stepping stone, whatever. And they just wanted to, whatever, just waltz through with that. They didn't have decades of love and attachment to these characters, and they just came in and left. Like, where's Ta-Nehisi Coates now? He was the next big thing. What did he last 3 years in comic books? And he lifted his leg, he peed all over it like a dog on a fire hydrant, and left. RJ, do you agree or disagree with that?
No, I completely agree. Richard has some interesting takes on things, but one of the things that he said recently that really hit the nail on the head was these people like the popular thing because it's popular. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, because if you think back to even when 89 Batman was a huge phenomenon, but even with that phenomenon at the time, my little sister and my mom weren't wearing Batman shirts. It was still us nerds wearing the Batman shirts. Still, even then, right? Now today, my daughters are wearing Spider-Man shirts, and they've never read a Spider-Man comic in their life. But it's part of the culture now, right? It's everyone loves MCU is like this is normie as sports,
I say this. I had a birthday party about 3 years ago. And my friend came in and he brought his wife, and I meet her for the first time. And she's not interested in board games. She's not interested in comic books, but she was wearing a Harley Quinn shirt. And I'm just like, can't like Harley Quinn anymore. Once your aunt knows about Harley Quinn, what I mean? Like, I just find it funny that my wife who's, my wife is great. She's encouraging, everything like that. But when she turns to me and she's like, asks me a question about the high evolutionary, I'm just like, it's not cool anymore. It's, high evolutionary is one of my favorite characters. Now, like, the guys at work are like, yeah, the high evolutionary, and they're correcting me. I'm like, okay, whatever, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah, me and Brian talk about this all the time, that part of the appeal of comics back in the day was that they were sneered upon by parents, teachers, right? Like there's this transgressive quality to them, that just by having a comic, you're like doing something you weren't supposed to be doing, you know.
Yeah. Like Brian and I, we were talking about characters. Like for me, the Absorbing Man. This is so nerdy, but look who we're talking to. The Absorbing Man was my character. It's like I jealously guarded. I didn't want anybody else to like that character. And I'm always like, oh, he hasn't made it into the MCU. Like he made it in that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but nobody saw that. It's like I'm so proud of if they make a movie and the Absorbing Man's the villain, I'm like, oh man, it was just, I don't know, like nobody knows about that character. It's my character. I protect it. Don't. But everybody should know Dead at 17. Everybody should.
I gotta say, I'm just thinking back when you're saying the shirt. I can remember I have a picture of me and one of my brothers, the next up from me, on my first day of school. He's 2 years older than me. He's wearing a Batman shirt. I was wearing a Spider-Man shirt. This is what we grew up on, right? This is the people who wore the kind of shirts, 6 and 8-year-olds and things like that.
Oh yeah, and we suffered for it. I got made fun of, bullied, all kinds of things for, wearing stuff like that.
Like RJ just said, it was like a club. I switched schools, and so now I'm in school in 3rd grade. I don't know anybody, and I look around, and I saw one kid had a Hulk lunchbox. Boom! I went and talked to that kid. We're talking about comic books. Other kids had Met paraphernalia. I knew we were gonna have nothing in common. I'm not a sports guy, but kid with the Hulk lunchbox. I had my Batman lunchbox. He had his Hulk lunchbox. And we've been friends ever since. Because it was a small club. Anybody was invited, but
right.
But anybody, they just didn't. I could see some kids had like a Superman lunchbox or whatever, because Superman was one of those characters that transcended like Mickey Mouse. But you know what I mean. For the most part, if you had a Spider-Man T-shirt on, I remember going to a diner and my buddy Mike had a Superman S shirt on. This was the 80s, and I didn't know it, but guys that I worked with I was working at a gas station. They were over there, and they were making fun of me and Mike. And the next day at work, they're like, "Oh, you guys had your underoos," and I was like, "What are you talking about? You had your Superman, the underoos." I'm like, "Yeah, well, we like comic books. What do you want me to do?" But nowadays, you go into the supermarket, there's a 60-year-old grandmother with a Superman shirt. Doesn't mean anything. It's
right.
Like I work at the airport, so I'm taking the Long Island Railroad. I take the air train to the airport. There's tourists coming in, and they got sneakers that say Marvel. They got luggage that says, and it looks like some Midwestern grandmother. You know what I mean? And you got luggage with the Hulk on it. Like Marvel has lost it. And it's always old. It's always like John Buscema and John Romita artwork too. It's you never see modern Hulk. Maybe a Dale Keown every once in a while, but you never see old school. I mean, you only see old school stuff.
That is what's funny, is that they market, even the DC stuff. They market with the older artwork, which I love. But like,
right.
But why aren't they releasing books like that? Like, why has everything become so homogenized? Because I know, like for example, my art, I get called cartoony and stuff a lot, and justifiably so. But if you look at some of the older art, I mean, if people saw it today, they'd think the same thing. It looks cartoony.
Yeah, I don't think cartoony's bad though.
Well, I don't either. But I know what people mean by that.
Right.
I think actually that's one of the things we need to get back to. That's one of the problems I have with modern artists, especially the people working for Marvel and DC. You do have some artists in there that are really good and really detailed, but I don't think that's what comics are about. I think comics for me is Paul Smith. Is you boil it down to the smallest amount of lines you got to put on that page while still getting excitement and movement in there.
Right. I mean, Gil Kane, was like almost a fine artist, and another name that Gene Colan. When I said Gil Kane, I meant to say Gene Colan. Gene Colan was like as close to a fine artist as you could get in Marvel, and he was the exception to the rule. But like we could all agree, Jack Kirby, his anatomy was weird. Like Josh, you're an artist. You're talking to two writers over here. Like I'm sure you could. Like I was saying just the other day, I remember Captain America comic book, and he was throwing a punch, and he had an extra muscle in the arm. Nobody had this muscle over here but Jack Kirby drew it, but the punch looked like it was knocking people down. It looked like it hurt. And it was more the excitement and the energy of this image more than the anatomy. And, I'm not saying comic book people should be drawing bad anatomy. I'm saying, I think the imagination and the action and the storytelling is, I don't know. Am I getting off on a crazy point?
No.
It feeds into the stylization,
okay.
and you're a stylized artist right there. What we're looking at right now, that's stylized art, and it fits in with the story. It fits in with your coloring and everything else because you're doing everything, and that's one of the key things in comics that's missing with so many comics today.
Yeah, it's because I'll take an artist with maybe some wonky anatomy as like. But if they've got great rendering, great sense of movement, a great style, I mean, because like for example, Frank Miller gets a lot of flack these days because his style is not what it used to be, and his stuff is weird looking sometimes. But I love it because it's got life to it, and it's unique, and it's not. He's still doing his thing in spite of the entire comic world has moved on to a whole new look and feel, and yeah, he's older and probably doesn't have the acuity that he once had, but man, even if his stuff is weird, but I still love it, because it's interesting to look at, if nothing else, too much modern art, I think is.
I see one of the comments. He says like you go to a Walmart and it's all John Byrne, Superman, or Jim Lee X-Men shirts. Yeah, and
right.
we forget that's like 30 years old now.
That's wild. Yes.
And you know what? Somebody told me I was talking to an apprentice at work, who's into comics, and I was like, yeah, I love John Byrne and George Perez, and he goes, I don't like that old school stuff. I'm just like, oh man, talk about feeling old right then and there. I was like, somebody hand me a cane, I want to go, my back hurts. John Byrne and George Perez is old school, I guess they are. You forget, but
yeah.
As Josh was talking about Frank Miller, I think the same thing about Walter Simonson. Looking at his Ragnarok stuff, I mean, he's still going strong, and he has not changed his style. I love it. Those books are just magnificent.
Oh yeah. Walt Simonson, he is still at the top of his game now. Yeah, those Ragnarok. That was one. I had that comic out on my easel reading it. And one of my friends came over, and he's casually into comics, and oh my god, yeah, he went home and ordered it just from looking at the artwork. That is so. Walt Simonson. Why Marvel's not hiring this guy? What is wrong with Marvel? I think they just can't afford him.
And the funny thing is that the new art that they have for their characters that they're getting right now, they completely own that. The artist's got no say, no nothing in it at all. It goes completely to Marvel if you want to draw for Marvel right now. And yet they're still using the older stuff. It would be financially easier to use the newer stuff, but no one wants it.
Well, the thing about the old art too, it's like there's a design sense to it where it all looks good on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
How many panels from a modern comic look good on a t-shirt?
That's true. I didn't think about that. I was looking through Secret Wars the other day. We were stopping and just checking out individual panels.
Right. Because I think it was Mike Allred. Mike Allred, who does Batman?
Yeah. Love him.
Yeah, because his philosophy was like every panel should look like it should go on a t-shirt. And I love that idea because it makes you think about each panel as important, that it has to have a design and a flow to it. And, so I love that philosophy.
Mike Allred is the coolest guy. He was on my channel, and he's just so freaking cool. Yeah. I think he's one of the greatest living comic book artists right now. So awesome. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. To me, he is the consummate comic book artist. And you're right. Every one of his panels pops in his wife with that coloring. Oh man, I could gush about Mike Allred so much.
Well, like
He's
like the comment just said, that's another thing too, is that when the artist had a simpler, cartoony style, they could work quicker and put out more books, and they could stay with the title for years and years. Like that just doesn't happen anymore because
right.
everyone's too busy spending all their time rendering every shoelace and every rivet.
It's funny that you said that, because somebody put on Twitter, I wish I could remember who did it, but they showed a drawing of Captain America with the Buccaneer boots, and then they showed another drawing of Captain America, but it had the laces and the treads on the boot, and he said, which one of these is better? And I'm old, the Oldenson, so of course I said the other, but not that the other thing was wrong, but you can't keep that up. Do you think that there's a reason why these artists don't last?
And that style too allows your room to film it. It has a room for the fantasy to take over, and so that you don't need all that, because it's like almost like they're drawing now for the movies, right? Or doing all the design work so that they can take it straight to screen.
Yeah, I do. I think when Marvel did that Ultimate Universe, that's the first thing I thought of was this is like first thing they did was they turned like Nick Fury into a Samuel L. Jackson. They drew the characters as actors and actresses already. In that comic Wanted, they drew the main character to look like Eminem because that's who Mike Millar wanted to play him in the movie. And to me, that was like, I love Mark Millar, Brian Hitch and all these guys. I'm not a fan of Brian Bendis, but I thought that was like you're missing the point of comics. Comics are to be comics. There's nothing wrong with making a movie about a comic, but when you're making a comic with the purpose of this is going to get translated into, I think you're doing comics a disservice.
Right. It's funny. I was just talking to one of my artists that was doing a poster for me for a feral, one of my characters, and he said, she turns into a werewolf. Where does her clothes go? I said, comic book logic. You just don't have to draw them. Okay, just
there
draw
you
them.
Go. Yeah.
Well, I have an answer for that in my comic, RJ. I'll lend it to you. Where do the costumes go when people shape change?
Well, how many things in comics growing up did we see that didn't necessarily make sense, but the fans would figure out explanations and make it work,
Like and Captain America puts the shield on his back and then puts a T-shirt on, and you don't see the shield anymore. Yeah. That's a good T-shirt. There's so many. Don't you think Peter Parker would be sweating his brains out, dressed with the Spider-Man costume underneath his clothes? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And Clark Kent's got to fit the whole cape underneath his suit,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Or Batman, how does because his suit's supposed to be filled with gadgets, stuff like that. He's at an executive board meeting, and nobody's like, this guy's always wearing his pajamas. I'm not taking him seriously.
Mine was always trying to figure out exactly how Wolverine's claws retracted into his arm. I was like, there's not enough room there. There's just not.
I always liked. They said that his healing factor heals, and every time he pops his claws, it hurts and he bleeds a little bit. I don't know, that made it a little bit more like, you don't want Wolverine popping out his claws because it hurts, so he's going to be angry or whatever. And how does the Hulk's pants stay on? And then She-Hulk, she transforms and her pants rip, but not her shirt. But she's got a big old chest. Her shirt should just rip off. Buttons should be flying and taking out the red. But it's comic books,
Yeah.
Either you get it or you don't. And I'm being flippant when I say that, but I really do mean that. When it comes to comics, either you get it or you don't. And I do think that a lot of these people that came once comics got too popular, there was a lot of people that just don't get comics, and they got hired anyway. And I think a lot of them are still working in comics. Josh gets it.
Well, it's fine if you're a fan of the movies and stuff, but maybe just stick to that lane. Maybe you're not meant to be working on this side of it. Maybe go get involved in film production or something.
Right. If you're working in modern comics, and I've seen this, and you're tweeting, Superman doesn't work in a modern audience. It's like, you don't get comics then. If you don't get Superman, you shouldn't be working in comic book, because Superman is the archetype. He's the he's the ultimate superhero. He's the first superhero. Like, okay, you don't get Superman, fine. Do sci-fi, do horror, but do not write superhero comic books if you can't come up with a Superman story or understand Superman.
Well, more people should be making their own books too. Like,
right? Yeah, I'm talking about the big two, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if you're inspired by the movies, like I was inspired by Batman, but I didn't want to go and make Batman comics. I wanted to make my own comics. So like.
You would make a Batgirl comic, cute Batgirl comic.
Yeah, I'd be done. You know what? I actually have an idea for a Supergirl comic that I've wanted to do for years, and yeah, maybe one day.
There's a little teaser.
Yeah.
I don't know. RJ, what do you think? I'm talking crazy? Because a lot of people think.
Not at all. You're hitting the nail on the head there, John. That's exactly the way that it is. I remember again. You were talking to Jim Shooter, and Jim Shooter once did an interview saying, if you can't write Superman as Sir Galahad, then find yourself another writer for that comic.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah. And he was a man who wrote Superman comics from when he was like 15, right?
Yeah. I think he started comics when he was 14. How did that get? I guess there was no labor laws back then. How did that happen? I started joking about this, and then I became serious about it. But I was Matt Barr was on my channel, and I was saying, like, if I was to be the guy in charge of comic books, and somebody says, I want to write whatever, I'm going to write Wolf and Batsy, I want to write T-Bird and Throttle, and okay, what was your favorite comic growing up? What was your first comic? And show me a picture of your comic book collection. You know what I mean? And if like, I don't want to see some PDFs of recent. I want to see like long boxes with well-read comics, and if you don't have that, then I'm sorry, you can't work. That's to me like you want to be on the Mets. Okay, let's do some push-ups. Let's throw the ball around. Oh, you can't catch? Like, if you don't have long boxes and a big stack of comics just right next to you, teetering, ready to, you shouldn't be writing comics.
Well, I think the point is that comics is its own medium. It's not just a lesser form of books or movies, right? It's got its own language, its own history, and if you don't know any of that, like you don't go and make a movie without any knowledge of movies.
Right? Yeah. That's a more eloquent way of saying, like, with the Ultimates, these guys were clearly making. They even called it cinematic storytelling. They were clearly thinking of movies when they wrote the comics. Like, can you imagine if I just go and make a movie and I'm thinking of comics? It wouldn't be a good movie.
I mean, you could make a movie influenced by comics. We've seen people do that, but
right.
It's still like you still have to work within the visual medium and language of film, right? I mean, it's a lot of people working in comics don't respect the medium that it is. That it's its own medium, like I said, its own history, its own language, and that's all important.
Yeah.
As I usually say when I'm talking about Will Eisner, and his rule is the story happens in the gutters, where there's a panel break and your mind has to fill up what's going on. If you can't bring the reader to a place where he fills up the blank spaces, then you haven't done your job.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And that's what's unique about comics and the storytelling of comics, really.
Yeah. I think, yeah, you're right. Definitely more than movies. Your brain has to fill in gaps
Yeah. And I've been making comics for 20 years, but I'm still learning and studying and looking at other stuff and like saying how they do this, how they do that. Like, there's still a lot to learn from, like, people who came decades before, so like, just like the same with film, whatever you're doing, you need to invest in it and learn it,
Yeah. I wanted to say your storytelling, and I keep going back to T-Bird and Throttle, even though you have a campaign. Well, obviously I haven't read this yet, but the storytelling in your comic is flawless. You could take the words out and go a couple of pages and follow along with the story, which I think now that I'm making my own comic, it's harder than you think. You know, I
Yeah,
think
because even after I write it and then I draw it, like I will rewrite it again once I have it, because I'll change things. Like once you see it visually, it changes the way you look at the story, and then
Definitely.
even after I'm doing word balloons, I'm still like restructuring and rewriting. It's a constant process.
I
And
didn't
you have
think of
to,
that as you being the writer and the artist. Do you change your script as you're drawing?
oh,
I never thought of
oh
that.
yeah, oh yeah, all the time. Like some of my
Oh
best
wow.
ideas, yeah, some of my best ideas don't come until I'm actually drawing it. Because I can have a tightest script in the world, but until I'm seeing where the characters are standing, he's here, but this happens. Oh, I didn't account for that happening, and it changes everything. Yeah,
Wow, I never thought of that before. I just because I have Renzo working with me, and sometimes I'll have a 5-panel page, and then I'll get back a 7-panel page, and I'm not going to argue with Renzo. He's amazing.
right.
So I just figured that was just normal with a two, with a one. Like I just figured it was like right out of your brain, whole cloth. Like just pull it out, like in Harry Potter with the strands of thoughts, and you just throw it on the page. But no, it changes as you're drawing it too. That is really interesting.
Yeah, it's a very messy process. If you saw the other side of it.
Yeah.
Um,
RJ, what do you think about that?
Well, that's exactly what I do. I mean, I don't do the art, but I do the same thing as Josh. Excuse me. It's because like Nick and I are doing the last chapter of Cromb the Destroyer right now, and he said, "Can you give me the entire 22 pages?" And I said, "Really, I can't. I can only give you the first 8 because depending on how you draw those first 8, it could change the second 8 pages completely." And
yeah,
I mean, I have a standard where I'm going with it, but the dialogue could change. And I have another guy right now. He's used to working in manga, and he says, "How much space do you want me to keep for the word balloons?" And I said, "I can't tell you that because when I get your art back, I'm going to rewrite the entire dialogue. So I'll give you a basic, 3/4 of the panel or something like that. And if you give me so much space that I can write more, I'm going to write more. If you give me less, I'm going to write less." And it changes all the time.
Oh, okay. You made me think of something else. Uh, Kelsey and I just yesterday we were doing, talking about Marvel Secret Wars, and people in the chat were like, "Look at how much dialogue is in each issue." Now, and nowadays you could read a mainstream comic in minutes. There's so little dialogue. What do you think? Should comics be dialogue heavy? Should is less more? Is a lot? Because I know RJ's a writer. You're very wordsmithy and philosophical. So I'm kind of curious what both of you guys think.
I would say it depends on the story. For example, in this latest book, the Dead of 17 Kill Day, here's a good example. So I had written all this prose that's sort of like her thoughts, sort of narrating what's going on. And I loved it. It was really great. And I went to actually letter it, and I realized I don't need any of it. The visuals tell the story. So I dumped pages of stuff I had written.
Okay.
But I think it works better visually. So it just depends. It depends. But you just have to be aware of how it's coming across. You have to be aware of what you're writing, the ideas you're trying to convey. Sometimes you need to tell a story. Sometimes it needs a word balloons, but sometimes the visuals say it all. So you just have to be conscious of it.
What do you guys think of thought bubbles? It seems to be like in the past 20 years or so, thought bubbles kind of disappeared. Are you working with them, Josh?
I'm not traditionally, but like I said, in Kill Day, it's a lot of the narration. It's in her head, so they're not thought bubbles, but it is a lot of it is her own thoughts, taking you through the issue. So,
and I have used word balloons in mine, but only sparingly. Same time.
Yeah, my first issue, captions are taking the caption boxes are taking the place of thought bubble. But in the second issue, I'm like, I don't want to give any spoilers, but there's 2 stories. One of the stories is literally the life passing before somebody's eyes. How do you do that without thought bubbles? You know what I mean? So it's present and cut back to the flash. And so I was like, I guess I'm bringing back thought balloons, everybody. Let's see how that works. You know, there'll be some like 18-year-old. I'm flattering myself thinking an 18-year-old would want my comic, but they're going to be like, "What is this thought balloon? How do you read that? What does this mean?"
Well, it's a tool we have, that we can use that you can't do in film really necessarily. So
I'm seeing some controversy in the chat. Honduran Honeymoon Honda says he doesn't like. He says thought balloons, but he doesn't. And then the other says I don't like captions as thought. Yeah, I like thought balloons, but then again, that's what I'm used to, and I really liked getting into the mind of the characters. It was almost like when you saw their thought balloons, you knew nothing devious was going on. Like, who thinks I'm gonna trick people? You know what I mean? Like you knew that when Spider-Man thought, "Oh my God, I gotta get out of here. Aunt May needs the medicine." It was like an honesty that you don't really see now. There's just a lot of talking, but we all know even heroes misjudge the situation. But when you got their thoughts, you knew it was the absolute truth, or at least the absolute truth as far as that character was concerned.
Yeah, I would say try to find, if you could find a way to tell it visually, do it that way. But if you absolutely cannot, then yes, resort to narration, thought balloons, whatever. But I think trying to do it visually should always be your first goal.
That's pretty much what I do with Renzo's art is the fact that I look at it and I say, okay, how much of what I just described did he put down on the page already in the panel? So what can I take out from the dialogue? That's the equation right there.
Well, just so you know, I pay RJ extra to mess up your comic. Just so you know that. we RJ Renzo's working on both of our comics. Matter of fact, I saw Renzo's artwork on Tom's Valiant. I said, this is just beautiful superhero artwork. So that I asked RJ, would it be okay? So I'm so happy. But that's neither here nor there.
No, it's looking great though, from what I'm seeing.
I agree with you though. I'm glad you said that. If you could tell it through the art, that is the best. So that is actually something I got to think about. Because my second comic is going to have more dialogue and thought, and maybe that's an indication that I need to work on the visual storytelling. We're only 5 pages in. There's room to change.
The funny thing is that what is it? I really don't like the direction that John Romita Jr.'s art has gone into. I think that he really hit his peak,
Yes.
Usually probably early 90s, late 80s. But he said, I think he's under a false impression because he keeps on saying that, even he did an interview with Graham there probably last year, 2 years ago, saying, I can never rival my father's work. Therefore, I try to be a better visual storyteller. But I think he sells himself short. And but at the same time, that's an artist right there as a comic book artist saying visual storytelling is the pinnacle. That's a comic book artist and where they should be looking towards.
Yeah. I don't want to say anything bad about John Romita Jr., but yeah, I think his best work was years ago. I see his modern Spider-Man stuff. I'm not too impressed. But look at this best work over here. That's your first issue, and this is your current issue. Look at the different artwork.
Well, that's what's funny though. I have people tell me all the time they prefer my old stuff.
I like your old stuff, but there's no denying your new stuff. I like it better, but I still like your old stuff. Yeah.
I mean,
I loved it when I saw it. I bought a couple of your comics before, and I knew who you were. But
it's sort of it's the challenge of an artist because you're always growing and learning, or at least you should be. But sometimes you go in a direction that your fans don't necessarily like. They're like, "Oh, go back to where you were." So it's.
Yeah, and I'm I've seen like when John Byrne did that. I don't know what it's called, but when he did that like that dot stuff on the Submariner comics, and then he stopped doing it, and I was like, "What are you doing? Go back!" Some comic book fans are probably the worst. Have you ever gotten criticism that was just so bizarre you didn't know how to handle it?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I used to get a lot of mean stuff back in the day, but I had a lot of good stuff too. So like, T-Bird has been the one thing that's pretty unanimous in like people loving it. Dead of 17 could be divisive, but so we'll see how this goes.
I didn't go through all the perks. I have to
I'm sorry.
just no, but I want to. Do you have a perk where you can get T-Bird and Throttle with Dead at 17 here? Or
No, because I don't really have enough copies to do that, and I wanted to keep the campaign pretty pure. I may there's going to be a new chapter of T-Bird coming up fairly soon, so I'm trying to keep those separate for right now.
all right, well, good to know. For keep
But-
an eye out for the future.
But you can get it on my website. I do have it available on my website. So.
What's your website?
JoshHoward.net.
Okay, I'll put it in the chat. JoshHoward.net.
Well, Josh, we usually like to keep it to about 1 hour so that John can get to bed and not kill anybody the next morning when he goes to work. And I want to give the last word to you, the last, let's say, elevator pitch for Dead at 17 for anybody who's watching to get them to go over and buy it on Kickstarter.
Yeah, like I said before, this is the sort of a 20th anniversary celebration, but it's also a new beginning for Dead at 17. So, if you haven't read it before, then it's perfect for you. But if you've been following along for the last 20 years, it's perfect for you too. At its heart, it's about a girl who's targeted by an evil cult for murder. She's killed, but is mysteriously resurrected. And it's sort of just about how and why and everything behind all that. So check it out. But you have about 3 more days to get in. So if you're interested, please do.
Yeah.
All right.
I recommend this. This is a fun series. It's very thoughtful. It's an epic. It's a comic book epic. Is really it's a 20-year epic. Yeah, I could say epic 20 times, but you don't know. It's not just a 6-issue series and then forget about it. This is a literally 20 years you've been working on this with twists and turns and some characters there's stakes. I don't want to. I just realized I was about to spoil stuff. I don't want to spoil it.
Well, as I said, the link is in the description for Dead at 17 for anybody who wants to go over and get yourself a copy. You got 3 days left. And I want to thank you very much, Josh, for coming on here. I know I just messaged you out of the blue. Probably had no idea. You knew John, so that was my in. But thank you very much for showing up and sharing your campaign the last couple of days with us.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, I will be here next week with Make Comics Great Again. In this, next week is John's week for Comic Book Team Up, and then I'll be doing Make Comics Great Again. And week after that, I have someone on here. I think it's Dan Fan, who is coming on. She has her own web comics. We're going to be talking web comics in 2 weeks here at this space. And so I want to thank everybody in the chat who's been here for 1 hour and 8 minutes. And once again, thank you, John, and thank you, Josh.
Thanks. Good.
I'll see y'all later.
Bye-bye.